This video will contain exam advice in relation to your A-level psychology exam. We'll go through the different assessment objectives, the different types of questions that you will encounter during the exam, and some little hints and tips about how to answer them. AO1, this is your knowledge and understanding of psychological ideas, can refer to the methodology and the procedures of a research study, so that is your aims, findings, conclusion, or it can be your key ideas about theories, approaches, and explanations. AO2, this is your application of knowledge. So applying your AO1 knowledge to a new situation. It can be in a theoretical context, in a practical context, or when you are interpreting data. Generally, this will require you to refer back to a scenario. AO3 is your analysis and evaluation. So it can refer to making judgments and reaching conclusions, can also refer to the development and refining of a practical design. So particular within a research method section, you might be asked to change the design of a research study into a different design. So it might be, how could the researcher change this piece of research from using independent groups design to using matched pairs? However, generally you will come across this when you are asked to evaluate a research or a theory. So evaluate Ash's research. So your assessment objective weightings. In AS, AO2 and AO3 are worth approximately a third of your overall paper. However, AO1 is slightly more percentage to it. In year 2 or year 13, AO1 and AO2 are worth a third, and there's more weighting given to AO3. So we need to make sure that we're spending time revising and remembering and spending time on elaborating our evaluation points. So, the types of questions that you might encounter during your exam: recognition and selection of information, description, differences and distinguish questions, applying knowledge questions, research method questions, mathematical content, evaluation, description and evaluation together, your extended writing or essay questions, extended writing and essay with a scenario. Recognition and selection of information. These will generally be your multiple choice questions and should be fairly straightforward for you to answer. So, for example, 5 evaluative statements below about the cognitive interview. Which 2 statements are correct? Okay, so hopefully we should know that we need to have special training in order to carry out the cognitive interview. So that would be D. But imagine we couldn't work out the second one. The best tip I can give you is to rule out or cross out the ones that you definitely know are incorrect. So we know that it could be used in both Western and non-Western cultures, so we can rule that one out. It isn't unethical, so we can rule that one out. So we're left between B and E. So it's not going to be that we can't use it to interview children, so we therefore would select B. You might also get a selection question, so matching up the definition with a key word. Therefore, it's important to make sure you do have knowledge of the key words within the psychology topics. Description questions. These can take a variety of different forms within an exam and can be a variety of different marks. However, they should never be more than 6 marks. So look at the number of marks to guide you how much you need to write and how much detail you need to include. So use the rule of approximately a mark per minute. Also use that 1 point should be about 25 words, and you should try to include as many points as there are marks. So if it was a 6 marker, include 6 points. You could get a simple one that's just naming. So name 3 behaviours that enable the minority to influence the majority. This is where your key understanding and knowledge of the specification is going to help you. So we know that 3 factors that affect minority influence are flexibility, commitment, and consistency. Outline what psychological research has shown about the short-term memory according to the multi-store model of memory. So here we are just saying what our short-term memory is in terms of encoding, capacity, and duration, and what research has shown about each of these 3 features of short-term memory. Describe systematic desensitization as a method of treating abnormality. So therefore we would say 3 points about systematic desensitization. Outline the structure and processes involved in synaptic transmission. Here we have 6 marks worth of information. We need to divide that into both the structure of synaptic transmission and the process that is involved. Differences and distinguish questions. Here you need to clearly state the difference between 2 things. It's really easy to not hit this requirement. So use your connectives such as however, whereas, but, although, conversely, or nonetheless. So according to the multi-store model of memory, there are several ways in which short-term memory and long-term memory differ. We explain how the findings of one or more studies demonstrate that short-term and long-term memory are different. So here, students will tend to say the capacity of short-term memory is 7 plus or minus 2 items. The capacity of long-term memory is unlimited. However, they're not making it clear they know the distinction between the 2. If they were to say the capacity of short-term memory is 7 plus or 2 items, whereas the capacity of long-term memory is potentially unlimited, they are meeting the mark scheme and the assessment objectives. Outline the one difference between EEGs and ERPs. Again, use your connective, whereas, however, conversely, to show that you understand the difference. Applying your knowledge. These questions will have a scenario or stem to them, and you need to make sure you make explicit links to the scenario. So use the quotes from the stem or the scenario you are given and apply it to the theory, explanation, or research you are describing. Annie can still skateboard even though she hasn't skated for many years. Jermaine can still recall what happened on his first day at university even though it was ages ago. Billy remembers the name of the tools he needs to repair the broken tap. Identify the 3 types of long-term memory and explain how each type is shown in one of the examples above. Firstly, we would need to say what one of the types of memory is. So, for example, procedural memory. This is a memory about a skill or something that we have learnt to do. For example, this is demonstrated in Annie who can skateboard. Research methods. Okay, this is where we will apply our knowledge of research methods to a scenario. Remember, these can be interweaved across all of your papers, not just in paper 2 where research methods is its own section. Mathematical content. They can appear on anywhere across all papers, so therefore remember to take a calculator with you into the exam. However, the requirements shouldn't be more complicated than what you would need for a grade C at GCSE. Evaluation. Make sure you read the question carefully, as they can be specific about how you need to evaluate, and make sure you elaborate on your evaluation. So follow the point, evidence, explain and link to show you clearly understand why it would be a strength or a weakness. So briefly evaluate the learning theory as an explanation of attachment for 4 marks. Now you can go about 2 ways. It's not stating you how much you need to evaluate. So you could do 1 evaluation point in a good level of detail, so following the point, evidence, explain, link. Or you could do 2 evaluation points in less detail. Apart from ethical issues, give 1 strength and 1 limitation of Milgram's methodology. Okay, so here they are asking you to give both a strength and a limitation, but also one that is differing from ethological issues. You may also get mixed description and evaluation. So I'm not stating this is an essay question. These can be shorter questions that is a combination of both your AO1 and AO3. Make sure you have a balance of both these assessment objectives and use the mark given to guide you how much you need to include in both of these. So for example, briefly outline and evaluate the authoritarian personality as an explanation of obedience to authority. So 4 marks. 2 marks will be for our outline, our AO1 of the theory, so state that it is a personality trait. People with an authoritarian personality are more likely to be obedient than others. It is a result from strict parenting. Then 2 marks for our evaluation. So a weakness of the authoritarian personality is that it is not able to fully explain a whole culture or subgroup. So it can't explain Nazi Germany. It is unlikely that the whole of Germany had an authoritarian personality. Extended writing or your mini essays. So in year 12, in your AS papers, you will have 12 markers. They should be approximately 300 words. In paper 1, you will have 2 12 markers. In paper 2, you will have 1 12 marker. Okay. Year 13, in your A-levels, you will see 16 markers now, and they should be approximately about 400 words. Now both of these have 6 marks given to AO1, therefore you should aim to include 6 key points of a theory and explanation. Okay, so when you are revising, try and identify 6 key points and 6 key terminology, so key words. Remember, marks are given for that effective use of key terminology. In year 12, you have 6 marks worth of AO3, so you should make sure that you write just as much evaluation as you do in your AO1. Do not go into a comfort zone and write lots of information about the outline and description of research or theories or explanation. You need to make sure you have that balance of AO3 as well. In year 13, more emphasis is placed on this evaluation content, okay? So you need to make sure you spend slightly longer on your AO3. So you should at least 3 peel or point, evidence, explain, counter argument and link paragraphs, okay, to show that you are being synoptic, but try to think about 4 evaluation points. Okay, you can do more, so about 5 evaluation points in less detail, but if you stick to 3, make sure you fully extend on those and elaborate. So, for example, discuss the influence into childhood on adult relationships for 16 marks. Extended writing and scenario, okay? So they're very similar to a standard essay question, okay? However, you are now going to get marks for your AO2, application to the STEM. Make sure you read this carefully and don't treat it as a standard 12 or 16 marker. AO1 stays the same at 6 marks. Write your AO1 paragraphs or section, so 2 AO1s on that. Then write a separate AO2 paragraph. Don't try to include your AO2 in with your AO1 as it becomes easily muddled and confused. Also, by separating them into paragraphs, you are making it crystal clear to the examiner that you are moving on to a separate assessment objectives. Examiners are busy people who are not being paid an awful lot of money for the amount of exams they have to mark. Make it easy for them to see that you are meeting AO1 and AO2. Then I would move on to my AO3 section. It's important to look at how much the marks are divided. Okay, so AO1 stays exactly the same. AO3 for 12 markers has gone down to 4 marks. Therefore, you don't need to include necessarily 3 point evidence explain link paragraphs. You could do 2 point evidence explain link paragraphs. For 16 markers, I would aim to try and do 3. So for example, this is from last year's paper. 2 students were discussing their friend David, who has recently been diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder. Melanie says, it wasn't a surprise to me that David has OCD because his mum is always tidying things and putting them in order and checking switches. Emma says, really, I didn't know that. I always thought that people with OCD have something in their brains that make them behave in that way. Outline and evaluate neural and genetic explanations of obsessive compulsive disorder. So that's your AO1. You're going to talk about the genes. Okay, cert gene, comp gene, that is there's more than one gene. You're also going to talk about neural explanations. So you're going to talk about your low levels of serotonin and abnormalities within the basal ganglia. However, you also need to refer to the conversations above. Okay, so the fact that his mum has it may suggest that it is genetic. Emma saying that she thought it was something in their brains would suggest there is neural explanations in there. Obviously you need to expand on those points, but they're just some suggestions.